Okay, yesterday I laid tile under the stairs in the closet and didn't figure you'd have much interest in that. And then spent quite a bit of time figuring out what was gonna work to get the tile set over this heating cable. And again, you know, I didn't figure you wanted to see what didn't work. I figured I'd learn what was gonna work and then show you the process that seems like it's going to be the best. Couple things that I did learn. One, this system probably going to work great, but the way that it should be installed, I think, is with a self-leveling grout poured over the top of it to completely encapsulate it and give you a smooth surface to set your tile on. Obviously we don't have the elevation in here to do that, so it wasn't really an option. And the way that I'm installing it is one of the options that Danfoss provides in their instructions. The other is, I think that the Ditra Heat mat, outstanding as far as installation. I don't know anything about Schluter's Ditra Heat, whether or not it works, but using that mat, 2 thumbs up. But again, not an option in this situation because of the difference in elevation it would cause between the bathroom and the master bedroom and subsequently the rest of the house. I knew that I was not going to be able to use a 1/4 x 1/4 notch trowel to set this tile on this. It wasn't going to give me enough thinset. I tried 1/4 x 3/8. I tried 1/4 x 1/2. Neither one was giving me enough coverage to feel that the tile was going to stay bonded to the floor, even with back butter in the tile. So I switched to a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch notch trowel to get my thinset on. Did a couple of tests and I'm still having to back butter the tile to get good adhesion between the tile and the thinset. Working with this wire loose as opposed to their other version that's put in a mat, I think that the one that is matted would be a lot easier because you're constantly fighting this wire, your notches, you've got to try to keep the wire in between to inside of a notch, and you end up on top of it. It throws off your spreading of the thinset. It's really fiddly, and I do not like the way that this system installs, but it's what we got. So I think we've come upon the correct way to get this done in our situation, but I wouldn't recommend doing this. There's much simpler ways to do it. And like I say, they offer another product that this wire is encapsulated in a mat like you see on the back of mosaic tile, and that actually may be a better way to go for what we're doing. And because these walls are not square, or at least my tile, based on the wall I chose to square off of, is not square to this wall and that wall, I'm probably going to have to individually cut every single one of these to make them fit and keep the edge under the trim. So, fun. And my focus is I want to get the tile down over this to protect it, and then I'll come back and do the other critical or other less critical areas. I'm saving the shower for last because I need to waterproof that, and in order to move the project along, I need to get cabinets set so we can get the countertop people in here so they can take their measurements and get the countertops built. because waiting on the countertops is what is, at this point, driving the plumbing. And the other thing that's kind of a pain with this system, the way it's designed, is you can't position your leveling clips reliably in the same location from tile to tile because you got to work around this wire. Whereas with the Ditra, you don't have that problem because the wire is below the level of the top of the Ditra and you can set your tile on top of it. And this stuff may be more robust than I give it credit, but the other thing that kind of slows this down is I'm trying to be careful and not drag this trowel over that insulation as much as possible, because I really don't want to damage that wire and have to tear all of this out. It's going. Puppy, no.
Come here, puppy.
And I didn't back burn that tile. Yeah. And that's why we're back buttering, because even when I press it down, the coverage just isn't that good. Now these wires will deflect a little bit. You can kind of push them back out of the way, but not always. All right, I spent a little over 8 hours on this yesterday, which I'm slow, but that's slower than normal. Working around that wire and having to back butter every single tile to get good adhesion, plus, you know, cutting the ones that fit around the edges took a little bit of time, but not that much. Working on top of this heating system, this version of it is pretty slow. The, you know, you got constant concern you're going to damage the wire, and, you know, plus just getting the tile to adhere, you got to spend a little bit of time. So I'm going to knock these wedges out. Forgot to turn that off last night. And get everything set up and ready to finish this closet out. I also kind of worked myself into a corner last night, so I was running out of space and decided to quit when I ran out of Thinset because I didn't want to mix up another batch and either throw it away or keep working until midnight last night. So. Cleaning out these grout joints is going to be a pain because I had to put so much Thinset down to get these to adhere that a lot of places it's squeezed up through there, and I, you know, couldn't really keep it out, so I'm going to have to clean it up after the fact. You already have to do that to a certain extent, but this is going to be irritating because you got to be careful not to hit the wire underneath, so I'm limited in what tool I can use. Instead of being able to use my oscillating tool with a diamond blade on it, I'm going to have to use a tungsten scraper. If you find yourself in need of some good knee pads, these things have been really good. I've spent a few hundred hours in them so far, and they're holding up pretty well. And they definitely save your knees. They're a little bulky. If you walk around a lot, they do slip down some, but they work a lot better than the ones that are not articulated. Now, the tool I was talking about, the carbide scraper, this is it right here. QEP is this brand. I got it at Home Depot. But there's 3 different size points on it depending upon the grout joint. What it's actually intended for is cleaning out grout so you can re-grout something. But I am using it to clean out the Thinset that squeezes up between these tiles. And what I've found is that using the smallest point and working it side to side gives you the best depth and also the best clean out in these tiles the way we're putting them down. And since it is going to be depth limiting, this is the best option to clean this stuff out and protect that wire underneath the tile. Otherwise, I'd be using an oscillating tool and a diamond blade that you just stick in there, and it's a lot faster and a lot less labor. And part of this problem could be a function of my ignorance and lack of skill that has resulted in this stuff coming up through here. But it's a lot easier to clean out while it's a little green than it is once it has completely cured. And even though I'm using those leveling clips with this wire in here, I've still got some lippage and spots on this. I mean, I think once the grout's in here, you'll be fine, but it just, we'll see how it heats the floor, but the installation process of this, the way I'm doing it, I'm not a fan. Now, one thing you do have to watch with this is if you get it in here sideways and twist it, or get it in one of these joints where multiple tiles come together and twist it, you can chip the tile pretty good. Alright. I'm going to vacuum that up and ready to go to work for the rest of the day. Alright, now that the Thinset is cured over the Ditra heat mat and the Danfoss heat that we put inside the mat, it is time to put the Hydro-Ban waterproofing on this shower so we can continue with laying tile. So I'm going to try to let y'all see as much of this as I can. It's hard to get the good camera angle, but I'm going to start down here on this end and work my way this way. Walls first and then the floor.
Stir stick?
Nope. It says do not mix it.
Ooh, okie dokie. Follow the instructions.
Yes, because we don't want leaky shower. Now it says to put this stuff on 15 to 20 mil thickness, 15 to 22 mils thickness wet, which is pretty dang thick. And all I'm doing right now is cutting in these corners, and then I'll roll it on to get my actual coverage. Oop. Good thing it's going on the floor. And I know that I really don't need it up this high, but we got enough of it, and I want to prevent moisture intrusion into the block substrate underneath this. Because unlike the outside, we did not waterproof the inside of the block. And, you know, so there is no vapor barrier. Well, I'm just making a hell of a mess with this. It is thick, it's like pudding. And where this corner meets, we've got a raw edge of the drywall. And so I figure that steam is going to condense up here, and I would prefer for it not to soak into the drywall. Even though there's going to be tile up against this top. And what I'm trying to do down here at this drain is get it over the seam where the fleece is glued to the pan on the drain, because the failures that have been showing up online on like YouTube have been that glue bond delaminating. So I'm trying to kind of mitigate that as best I can. And I know this is not a perfect solution, but it's, you know, the best I could come up with given the situation. And, you know, it may be one of those things where that problem is a rarity and whatever in the production was causing the problem in the middle of COVID, they have fixed. And I don't have anything to worry about. But I had rather do a little bit of insurance and end up with nothing to worry about than not do something and have a problem. Well, I don't know how well it shows up on the camera, but there's very obviously a color change to this when it's dry. The can says that it takes 2 hours for it to be dry enough to do a water test on it, or flood test. But getting this dried, the first coat in these corners, took over 3 hours. Now, it also says 70 degrees and I think 50% humidity, and we are at about 62 degrees and about 70% humidity in this house. So, you know, that could have had something to do with it, but it took quite a while to get this first coat dry. So now that it's dry, I'm gonna do the same thing in the corners again. I don't figure y'all need to watch me do that. And then I'll turn the camera back on when I get ready to start rolling it, which at the rate this dried, maybe tomorrow, because 3 hours from now it'll be between 11 o'clock and midnight. So I think with this roller, to get the millage coverage that they want you to have, I'm gonna have to do a tack coat and get it started and then go back over it. Yeah, that's what it's going to take to get the millage per coat, is put a little bit of a tack coat on there and then come back over it. Assuming that this works well. I don't know why you'd ever use a dang sheet membrane. And yes, at $87 or $89 a gallon, I'm trying to get every dang bit of this stuff out of here. There's less of this stuff seems to be soaking into this hardy backer because it's, you know, obviously not as porous. The Thinset that's over all of the screws and tape joint seams and tapes and all that stuff, you know, it's soaking up a little bit more. But not near as much as went into that. I know that a lot of times the professionals or whatever will only waterproof up to about the level of the shower head. And I am obviously most concerned about that, the impact area for the water where it's most likely to stay wet, but I do want it to be moderately waterproofed all the way up to the ceiling, because since we're doing tile, this house has had a tendency to stay cool, so I expect that there will be natural steam condensation quite heavily on this tile up close to the ceiling. So I do want it to be waterproof somewhat back behind there, up above where you would normally have the shower spray impacting the wall. And based on the appearance of the projects and demonstrations that the tile coach Isaac Ostrom has done, I know that this is going on kind of thin. But I figure, you know, they say minimum of 2 coats, and my thought is if I need it to get the thickness by putting 3 coats on, I'd rather make sure and get good coverage and do 3 coats than try to do it in 2, because I'm not doing it for a living, I'm doing it to make this a nice shower. So, while time is important, it's not determining my livelihood. This roller I'm using is a 3/8 nap roller. It's, you know, working pretty well actually.
Is this coat 1 or?
Yeah. And we're about 1.5 gallons into our 4 gallons.
So that's
Yeah.
probably,
2 gallons to get the first coat, 2 gallons to get the second coat, and the second coat actually goes a little further because
Yeah.
it's not soaking in as
Yeah.
much.
yeah. Yep. All right.
All right, now we're ready for the second coat. And it took about 2 hours for this stuff to dry, so. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do a 3rd coat on this. And the reason I'm doing a 3rd coat on this is that Laticrete says that you're supposed to get 50 square feet of coverage per 1 gallon bucket at the recommended thickness of material that they say you need for doing a shower or whatever. And so that tells me that based on the square footage we have, I should use almost all 4 gallons. So that leads me to believe there is not enough coverage on the wall yet, because we have not used a complete 3 gallons yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and do another coat. That's how much was left out of the 4 gallons. And according to my estimate, we should have used about 3 3/4, maybe a little more. This is a little more than 3 3/4. So we've got a little left over in case I stuff something up, I can touch it up. So we should be good to go. Okay, I'm starting to tile this shower in. I went ahead and did the floor, did it off camera. We were doing something else. But I'm starting to work on the walls, and I mentioned Tile Coach's channel previously, and the method that he recommends for doing a tile shower like this is to take a ledger board and put it in where your first full tile starts, and build your wall up on top of that, and it'll keep the bottom tiles from kicking out because they're, you know, cut on an angle to match your slope in your shower floor. Well, I tried to drive some nails into this floated wall that I did on top of that block, and all I did was bent nails. So I have decided to go ahead and scribe all of these first course of tiles and set them, let them set overnight and get the Thinset cured out, and then go on up with my wall. And the way that I found my first full tile elevation is I made a story pole that had these tiles stacked up that to the max height that they would be on this wall, and I marked my grout joints on there, and then found the high point on this ceiling, which is that one right there. So that means that there will be a full tile there, and there'll probably be full tiles back about halfway, would be my guess, and then I'll have to trim them to get them to fit, but it keeps you from having a line of full tiles and then a little sliver to fill in a corner up there. So the way I'm scribing this in, I'm using 1/8" spacers and setting my distance here, and you take the tile and put the factory edge down and put the finished face against the wall. Get it lined up, and then I'm taking a mechanical pencil and marking the bottom of the laser line, because I want an 1/8" nominally grout joint at the bottom. And then out at the saw, I'll transfer these lines to the front, give myself a full line, and we'll cut this out. But that way, when you flip it over, your factory edge, and this is all rectified tile, so it's a ground square edge, will be on that line, and your cut edge will be down at the bottom. And all I'll do is find that mark on the back, carry it across the edge, give myself a mark on the face, do the same thing on the other side. And use a straight edge to connect up the two marks. And then we'll line everything up over here on the saw. You want to raise your saw up so it's just skimming above the surface of the tile. And what I'm doing is lining it up so that this line that's running at an angle is on the waste side of the blade. And I'm doing that to make sure that I've got that grout joint at the bottom.
and I don't know if you'll be able to see this line or not with the lighting the way it is, but the line on the tile is just skimming this side of the blade. And we're good all the way down. And if I did that correctly, this should match the slope on the shower floor, and this should be level on my line. Now we're lined up and good to go. All right, it's time to start getting all of these valves and stuff cut in. I already did that one. You know, it fell in the middle of a tile. It was kind of easy. And I thought, well, I should probably show y'all how I did this. This one is actually going to be between two tiles. And unfortunately, this one is too. So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to have to figure out how to get the tiles stabilized so I can cut that round hole. But anyway, when you're marking these, one of the things you've got to be mindful of is your grout joint. So when you're laying out your marks, you need to make sure that you've got your spacing correct. Otherwise, your hole is going to be whatever the thickness of your grout joint is off. So what I'm going to do here is set this up on this course. Make sure I've got my spacing. And then just mark it. The way I'll end up cutting this out is just with the diamond cutoff wheel. And I'm gonna leave, you know, a little bit of space around it to give me a little bit of slop. So that way I can be able to position the tile. And then all you do is use a square and transfer your marks to your cut lines. And in some ways, this square box that Delta's putting on some of these valves is easier than if it was a big round hole, because then you've got to have a diamond saw to cut that big hole, or freehand it with a grinder, which you can do. I mean, in my video doing the tile for the floor boxes in the living room, you know, I cut that circle freehand with a 4-inch diamond wheel. But anyway, that's what it is. And we'll go out here to the saw and cut these two lines because it's a little easier, and then I'll cut that one with the cutoff wheel, and we'll clean it up and hope it fits. You can use this wet saw to nibble that center out and clean it up if you tip it back, but as cold and windy as it is, I'm not going to get wet doing that. So we'll just do it with the cutoff wheel. There it is. We'll check that, see what it looks like. I may have to clean it up a little bit more with a hand file. And I'm gonna need to open that up just a touch more. Alright, that'll work. Did I just chip that? These porcelain tiles are very tough, but the ones with these rectified edges, the sharp edges seem to chip very, very easily. Since this is a wet area, you want to try to get 95% coverage on the back of your tile. And at least according to the TCNA information I found. And back buttering on these porcelain tiles seems to be a mandatory requirement as well. And I figure anything I can do to not have to revisit this and repair something, I need to do it. And I see professional tile guys using the flat edge of their trowel to do this, and it gives me better control doing it with that margin trowel. The other thing I found with this tile is it is cupped pretty bad. And I know they say you should do a 1/3 offset. But our logic was, since we're using this tile leveling system, we can pull most of the bow out of it. But there's a couple of places where that's not been 100% accurate. And so you'll see some places around here where I've got wedges really close together. I don't know if there is any on this wall. Yeah, here and there. And it's to try to pull some of the bow and twist out of this. And in addition to the tile being bowed, I didn't catch it when I threw a level on this stud framing before I put the hardy backer up, but there's a pretty good dip in this wall right here. And I just didn't catch it, so I didn't shim it out. So that's kind of making this spot right here a little difficult. Well, sometimes you just got to say good enough, good enough. It won't be so obvious because there's going to be trim sticking out here, but I got pretty good lippage right there. What are you going to do? All right, I do not have a diamond bit big enough to do this hole in one shot. I just bought some Chinese diamond bits off of Amazon because I don't have much use for them other than this one tile job that I'm doing in this shower. You know, if I did this for a living, I'd have a better set of diamond bits, but I don't. So what I'm going to do is basically drill this thing dry to get a recess established that this bit will set down in, and I'm going to have to do it basically 4 different times and then kind of clean the hole up. So to start one of these things without a center in it, you need to kind of get it lined up where you want to start, and then lean the bit back to start going in at an angle. Alright, now we've got some guide marks established. We need to start using water because one of the complaints that people had because they were using it dry in the reviews on these things was that the diamonds fell off. Well, if you don't keep it lubricated and cool with some liquid water, then it's not gonna last very long. All right, and we'll check and see if that's close, and then we're probably gonna have to clean that hole up with that diamond hand file to get it so it'll fit right. But that's how you can make a hole bigger than what you've got a hole saw for. And you know, it's going to be covered up. The escutcheon for this control valve is huge, but I'm trying to keep the hole as small as possible to, you know, prevent a big giant hole for water to get in if we ever have a leak back behind this tile. All right, let's see if we got lucky. We're going to have to do a little bit of fine tuning to get this to work. That'll help if you don't put it on there upside down, dummy. All right. Okay, so it's going to have to be opened up basically from here to here, And I don't know that I'm gonna be able to do that with a hand file. We'll try it and see. But I think, But I did look it up, and the cover plate that goes on this thing is like 4.5 inches across, so I can make the hole a little bit bigger. I would prefer not to, but for the previously stated reasons. Thankfully, I remembered that I had some diamond cutoff wheels for my Dremel tool, so that allowed me to hog out that 1/4 inch or so clearance that I needed on this one side, because this valve kind of looks like it might be in there at a little bit of an angle, I don't know. So that's good to go. We got plenty of clearance all the way around that cap to get it out of there, so we should be able to get the escutcheon on and the threaded adapter piece once the center goes in that valve. So back to putting up tile. That was a lot of effort for one friggin' tile. This thing, VersaBond Pro-Lite, sticks well. I mean, it sticks tiles well, but I seem to peel about half of it off when I'm trying to spread it. The last tile. Yeah, at least in the shower. It's nowhere near the last tile.
Cheers.
After spending the last few days installing cabinets and countertops in the studio kitchen while the Thinset on this wall tile cured out, now I'm back on this shower. So the first thing I've got to do to get this ready to grout is clean all of the Thinset off of the face of the tiles and double check the joints and make sure that they're clean. As I said previously while installing this stuff, I'm not a really neat tile guy, so I end up paying for that on the back end by having to clean this mess up. All I'm doing is using a Scotch-Brite on a sponge. This is just hot glued to a little plastic handle that we had, and clean water, and going through here and scrubbing the face of these tiles down, because when I put the grout on, I do not want to have to deal with it being stuck in this Thinset that's smeared on these tiles, and then I got to try to clean both of those things off. It's a lot better to get the thick grout on and then just sponge it off than to have to scrub all of this stuff. So I'm gonna do this, get this cleaned up, and then we'll flip over and start putting grout in. And of course I use white Thinset, and this tile has white spots on it, so Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell if I'm trying to scrub off Thinset or if I'm trying to scrub off part of the tile finish. And one thing you want to be careful of if you're doing this is not to get too far back in these joints, because you can damage the waterproofing layer, and then you got a heck of a problem later on down the road. Well, I think y'all get the gist of this. You got to clean everything up, and I'll come back because I've already gone in and cleaned within the grout joints and vacuum everything to get it good and clean before we start putting the grout in, or before I start putting the grout in. I'll bring you back when it's time to start grouting. Since I'm doing this by myself, and I don't know how much grout it's going to take in these 1/8" joints on these big tiles, I only mixed up 2.5 pounds, so 2 pounds 8 ounces. We're still using the Mape Ultra Color Plus FA in the 5005 chamois color, just to give continuity among all these different tiled surfaces. So I'm gonna start putting this in these joints and see how this goes, because the cleanup is critical and takes quite a bit of time. So I don't want to get too much of this out and have it get ahead of me and I can't get it cleaned up. And where it transitions to the drywall, we'll end up using caulk to provide some expansion and contraction. And I should have gotten a margin trowel float for doing this up against the ceiling and against these walls, but I didn't. And the reason I'm doing the walls first is I knew I would be dropping grout everywhere, and I didn't want to have the floor finished and be getting grout dumped all over it. And this stuff dries much, much lighter than it goes on. And these narrower grout joints are a little harder to get it pressed back into than the bigger ones we've been working with on the floors. And even though I used that LevTech tile leveling system, these tiles were cupped bad enough that I didn't get all of the lippage taken out. I'd be more concerned if it was on the floor than on the wall, but there's going to be places where it's kind of obvious that they're not completely flat. And this is definitely slower than getting it on the floor. Well, you definitely seem to waste a lot more of this stuff working on the wall than you do on the floor. Well, that's how far 2.5 pounds goes. So I figure we're gonna end up using somewhere around 15 to 20 pounds on these walls, because that's about half of the longest wall. So, and what we found is typically about 20 minutes is the time to start wiping it off, because it starts hazing over. And it's been about 20 minutes since I started, and you can see it's starting to haze over up there towards the top. So I need to Go rinse this bucket out and come back and start sponging this mess off. One thing we have learned from doing this is do not go down the grout joints. You will pull the thinset out, go across, generally at about a 45, the same way that you put the stuff in, and otherwise you'll take your grout joint down too far. And don't use a lot of pressure, just gently wipe it and get it all over the wall so your wife types at you. And you don't want a lot of water, you just want your sponge damp. I'll go rinse these sponges. Let that haze a little bit again and then come back and do it again. This is definitely much easier with two people, because one can grout and the other can clean, and it keeps the process moving forward. Now I'm not going across those grout joints at all. I'm just going beside them to get the haze off of the tile. And it's a little easier on those other tiles we've been working with because they're a stamped tile, so the edge is more rounded. You've got a little bit more room to get in there against the joint, where these are rectified, so they're a very sharp edge, and so you get into the joint pretty easily. And the other thing I noticed about these rectified tiles, I mean, they're nice to put up because the grout joint's easy to maintain, but the sharp corners chip very, very easily. Okay, now let's see if we can polish this off, mix another batch, and do another spot. That entire process took about an hour and 15 minutes for that much tile. And if there's two people doing it, this goes a lot faster. But you see that I'm just one today, so. And this will need to be buffed down again with a microfiber once the grout has set up a little bit more, just to finish getting all of the haze off of it. And if you look at it with a raking light, you know, kind of coming down it, you can see that haze a lot easier than looking straight at it. But that's the process, and I'm gonna get to do this about 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 more times, because once I get the walls done, I've got to pull this up and do the mosaic in the floor. So fun. This is what the completed shower looks like. came out pretty good. A few things that we would have done differently. I thought that I had allowed enough space between the main shower head and the threshold of the shower to keep spray inside the shower. It really should have been another bay into the shower, another, stud bay in, to prevent excessive overspray outside the shower. I mean, it's not bad, but if you aren't careful, you'll end up with the stuff coming out, about this far. So if we'd have moved it another bay in, that would have been a lot better, I think. The heated towel rack, we really like. I mean, it keeps towels from getting moldy and stuff, or mildewy rather, from hanging up a wet towel. I could not find one that hardwired in for less than about $600, and we weren't going to spend that on it, but it works, and our towels are always fresh and dry, and they're warm when you get out. These Delta faucets and shower heads have been really nice. The nickel plating on them is their spot free, I think it's called, and it actually works pretty well. The only thing is, if you buy, I guess, any new shower head, but these specifically, you've got to remove Big Brother from your shower experience. You got to open them up and take a little restrictor out of there, or you might as well be taking a shower with a spray bottle. But other than that, it's been a pretty nice shower experience. All right, folks, I think that's going to wrap this video up for today. Thank you for watching, and y'all have a good day.